Okay, we're live, and hopefully I haven't wrecked the mic. Anyway, what I thought today would be that a few people asked about different scenarios of timing, and I thought we would try to show a few of those. And today I'm using a program called Paradigm. Let me just bring that up on the screen. Okay, now I was fortunate to be gifted this by some good friends, and so I'm able to show you a really cool feature that Paradigm has, and that is a timing scenario manager. And so I thought I would have a little display of that, and we're going to go through a few non-electric tie-ups and show you a couple of different kind of scenarios. So I've got over here the node list, and I've got two patterns just because I thought I might compare the two between them. Now I've drawn up, and I've got this spare pattern over here, which I'll just call spare pattern, spare staggered, because that's what it is. Alright, so I've got these. I've done these few types over here. I've done a 1742 echelon. Excuse me. Let's bring that up and have a look at that. So here we are, a 17 and 42 millisecond echelon type, and I've got a train tracks version, a Christmas tree, Echelon V, zigzag inconsistent, zigzag consistent. I'll explain the difference between those two. It's pretty simple, but it's about considering the troughs and peaks in the zigzag and mitigating the timing inconsistencies by putting in longer or shorter delays dependent. I've got a couple of train tracks versions of those, and a V which is consistent and a V which is inconsistent, and some fishbones which some people call herringbones or center lifts or things like that. So I guess we could call that fishbone dash center lift. Yeah, because it's usually something you would use when you're fully confined on all sides, and I suppose the fishbone is well, the fishbone is kind of from one end or the other. We can draw that in and show you a fishbone, and that will be some exciting learning for us to go through. Anyway, so let's get on with it. And so we're looking at this 17s 42s echelon, and so we're running 17s along the face. Now these are nominal service times that are firing, and I've got the timing relief or the timing contours on there, and we can put the burden relief on. Actually, let's have a look at what that looks like. And there we are, a bit of a burden relief tool. Let's see if we can snap that onto there. Yeah, and so we're sitting in here, the greens, sort of greeny yellow there. See, now I haven't used a lot of this, so it will be interesting to see, because I'm learning the program myself as I go along. And anyway, so burden relief's important to have a look at, and now what we're looking for is some differences in that. So we're not so much concerned about what these values are, apart from what the differences are. Right, so we'll just close that to get those off, and we'll close the, or we'll leave the contours up, because let's walk through the contours. So here we have a 1742 echelon going up there, which with these 17 switchbacks here. Got a driest mouth today. It's very, very hot in WA. It's like 39 today, and I think it's still a good still 33, and it's nearly 8 o'clock. Welcome to Australia. Now so 17s 42s there, and switchbacks are 17 42s. Now no offset because it's pretty standard. Now you can see many of these sorts of echelon shots can also have different flavors. Like you might want to like if we go over to this timing, this untimed area, you might want to do something really funky. So what's been cool about this program is learning the tie-ups, but you might want to do a 20, start off, and maybe you've got a traditional style quarry shot where you want to start it off quite fast and then gradually slow it down as the shot chokes through the burdens. So you can go up through here with your 25s, so forth. Let's see if I can do it quickly. You see a lot of this in quarries and not so much in mining. Generally, because most mining shots are deeper than 5 rows, the shot is definitely choked after 5 rows. So especially if your burden stiffness is not right, so you're not moving the blast forward, you're moving the blast up if your burden stiffness is quite low. And you can see here it's really quite good. You don't have to regenerate contour, like have to re-hit or refresh the contours. So I'm actually quite impressed, and it's working really well on small shots at the moment. So I haven't tried out a really large shot, but that would depend on what you consider large. And then we're just hitting in here with the 67s using a dyno range. But the program has comes built in. I mean, not that it's that hard to set up. You can manage the ties and create. So out of interest, you can manage your delays up here, and you can modify the colors. I modify the color of the 67 because it was a terribly bright cyan, and I didn't quite find that attractive personally. Anyway, up to the individual, but it's pretty easy. You can do custom, or you can change your products, which is pretty easy. You can use a multiple hole tie up here, or you can do this, and you can swap delays using these various options up here. So I'm really quite impressed with how it's performing. But anyway, back to this, this 1742 Echelon, and what I've done also just below here is I've done a square version of this, and you can see this is a square version on a V1 kind of construct there. So we're cutting across the standard of it. Generally, you would, with a square pattern, you'd run your line down here and go up like that, which I have an example later on down there in the next section. Anyway, moving on, we've done echelons, and we've done a little variation where we're gradually getting the blast from fast to slow. And let's have a look at burden relief. So you can see here the differences. We're moving it quite fast through here, we're moving it slower in the middle, and then we're, so this is our bulk, which is our standard movement that we'd expect. Anyway, pretty exciting stuff, don't you think? So moving on, now you have to forgive me if I talk a lot with so's and ums, just thinking, and ahs. Anyway, moving on, train tracks. Let's double click on that, and so it's pretty easy. You can have a whole lot of options, and I like this because, say if you actually have mine managers or superintendents of drill and blast that are interested in let's hope that doesn't run out of charge. Yeah, it's charging now. Okay, just noticed the battery was low. If you have mine superintendents and supervisors and superintendents of drill and blast, etc., that are actually interested in drill and blast, actually want to know what you're doing, then you can do a range of options for them with your timing, and you can talk about the problems that you might have or might be experiencing. Say, you can tell them, they might say, well, the dirt was really tight last time, so maybe you want to fire it a little bit slower, give it a little bit more time to move because it's already loaded and you haven't had an opportunity to re-drill or recharge or increase the powder factor, so you've just got a tie-up to work with. So you've only got the icing on the cake to finish the cake off and try to fix up all the ills that were in the design in that rock type. Anyway, so you can have this option of clicking through and doing lots of different things there. So we can see here these train tracks. Let's turn off the contour lines, only because it might make the tires a bit more visible, which is what we're going to talk about. And we can have a look. So you can see here we go up on the echelon with our 67s, with our burner echelon time, and this can also be called, probably maybe you could call this a half tree, like because it's really half. If you were to mirror that on the other side, you would end up with a Christmas tree, which is the next example. But let's see what we've got. And this is a square pattern, kind of standard square. So the train tracks might be a standard square for normal operations, but I don't know too many people that use square patterns in mining. It seems to be fairly well regarded that a equilateral pattern will produce a much more consistent rock response, and therefore more consistent movement, more consistent fragmentation. So a square pattern is something you might use more in a quarry, particularly if you're trying to produce armor rock or you're trying to increase your fines production. You might want to use a square pattern, because what you do with a square pattern is you actually increase into row and into spacing interaction, but you reduce this section in the middle. So you reduce this bit in the middle. This doesn't see any energy, whereas with a equilateral pattern or a staggered pattern, you are alternating those and getting some energy to the section that's not charged. See, this one will be shifted across and it would be misaligned so that it would have an area of influence, this would have an area of influence, etc. And perhaps I can show that on another program which I have up, which is my program that I tried to write and failed dismally at. Anyway, I'll stop waffling on and we'll start getting back to these types. So I've got a square sort of train tracks. There's a train tracks echelon, and nothing over here. I haven't drawn anything over there, but it's interesting stuff. And then we go on to a Christmas tree, which is essentially what we saw before, the train tracks, what we saw before, flipped with an offset on the short side. Remembering on the short side. Why on the short side? As we talked about before, the short side keeps this hump consistent is the word, consistent. So we can swap that if you'd like to see that. I can show you what happens when we swap the delays around. So let's just try that and swap the delays and put in a alternate, and you can see that we lifted this up. Now as you can see up in here, we end up with a kink. Now depending on your interval of space of your time, you may or may not see that kink. So you can see it sort of like goes flat, kink, flat, kink. You know, it's not as consistent as putting the 17 here, the offset, on the short length time and putting the longer time on the double length time up here, the double length row. And you can see this sort of like smooths it out. You might see that more in certain scenarios, but it generally keeps that a bit flatter through there. Anyway, moving on, and so where were we at? And now we have some bizarre Christmas tree here with a double offset. I think this is functional. It's got an offset all the way along, except for the last one, which I messed up. radio. And so you can see this sort of thing here. We can turn on these contours here, see how we come out through this area. Right. This is actually looks pretty cool. I mean, this is like a V1 Christmas tree on a square pattern. Normally you would just run those straight up the line. You have to excuse me, it's so dry, it's so hot. Plus I've got like 4 fluorescent lights to keep the light coming into the camera here. Okay, so what are we traveling at? Already 15 minutes. I've done a lot of chatting and not a lot of showing. I've only got through 3 of these examples. So moving on to the let's see, Echelon V. Yeah, here we go. And so we've got this Echelon V scenario. It's very similar. This is similar to the Christmas tree, isn't it? Except different delays. But they all follow the same scenario, but use different delays. And here we have, what we have is a kind of standard square V off this face. Looking at the timing contours on that. Yeah, you can see here the other one that we did, the V1, much flatter, right? If we look at the V1, much flatter contour lines than this one here. So interesting to note. See what the V1 does. It pulls that flatness down, it pulls the echelon down. What does that do? Let's see if we can read something. Well, we're still at 50 millisecond intervals, but these are much tighter. So much tighter means that the shot is going slower, and we see here this shot's going faster, and you can notice that in this back blast hole, this last blast hole firing 253. In the Christmas tree version of a V1 square, we're at 493. So we're double the time of our echelon there. Plus we're using different delays. That didn't help. But let me change that, because I think this is a valid example. So let's grab these holes down here. Let's box select these. Yeah, and I'll show you the swapping function, because I've just gone and said, oh, you know, it's double the speed, but haven't really shown you a like-for-like example. So let's replace the 17s with 9s, and we will replace only if both holes are selected. Yeah, and then we will replace the 67s with 42s, and we'll replace only if both delays are, yeah. And then we will change the 25s to 17s. Replace. Okay, so we're still 321. And you can see 321 on that compared to this one here, 253. You can see that this has brought our V flatter. So if you're wanting more of a flat V, you know, you have to go a bit faster, or sorry, a bit slower. And if you want a steeper V, then you go faster. Rightio, pretty easy there. Rightio. Let's go on. You can see this a bit muffled, but it's okay down there. It's a consistent aisle. It's not at the initiation point, the aisle, or the peak of the V. It's sort of like starts at there, but it's obviously been distorted off by our double delay down here. So I'm not suggesting this looks a bit odd, quite frankly. I wouldn't suggest that you would do that as a method. So let's give that a 100% not recommended at this moment, but some people would like that. I don't think it's invalid, but I'm just going to say, let's say it's not 100%. Let's say it's like 50% not recommended. Anyway, I just end up talking too much. I'm trying to talk a lot faster and get through this. So let's go on to the Echelon V. We had a look at that, which we liked, and then we are going on to this zigzag inconsistent. And what I mean by inconsistent is this wibbly wobbly action here. Let's crowd that into a 25 so we can see a little bit more of a display. And you can see here this it's a wibbly wobbly kind of contour, which means that the arrows are, and we talked about this before, didn't we? I'm not sure if we did. We talked about it on another stream. However, some of these holes are firing this way, and then some are firing slightly off by about 5 to 10 degrees, and we wibble wobble through that because this is our controlling factor here. It actually controls the contour to a certain point. Now we want to fix that. Well, let's see what we've got down here. It's even worse when you try to do it with a square. So this one here, I'm going to mark this one as 100% not recommended. That one, I wouldn't do this. This is like making a lot of trouble for yourself and actually trying to confuse the blast crew to the point that they do something completely wrong. I mean, I'm suggesting, you know, there's a few principles that the simpler the tie-up, the less trouble you have with misfires or missing leads or inconsistencies in your blast muck pile. So I wouldn't be doing that. But it's not terrible. It's pretty terrible, but it's not the end of the world stuff. Moving on, so we go to consistent square, consistent zigzag. Now there's not one for the square because you just can't do it with that style on a zigzag. You could do it with a train tracks style. In here we've got the here we have this zigzag. Now what we've done is we've taken it back with a long delay, short on the normal echelon. We go on a shorter delay. So let's turn on our timing contours there. And we can see this is much straighter in those contours, far more consistent. There is a bit of additional time that you gain, 321 because there's all 42s here with the wibble wobble, or 371. So you gain an extra 50 milliseconds over the course of this blast. Looking at the burden relief, we can see what that's looking like. So you can see the consistent burden relief. It's not that consistent. It's trying to be consistent, but it's not that consistent, is it? And here we have the inconsistent one, and they're both got a bit of a drop in them, but I believe that this other one, so where are we sitting? Let's see what we can figure out. I'm wondering why it won't. I will have to do some research on whether or not this I can get a hover or a pop-up bar on that, so I will have a look at that myself to find out. But the consistency here it's less consistent, and we know that from reading the contour lines, which show, and this should be far more consistent, even though the banding is a bit still there. The banding of relief changes is still there. Oh, here we go. We're hovering over it. Okay, so there we go. There's our burden relief on this side. If we look over there, burden relief under cursor. Excellent. Well, I didn't have to do that much research at all, did I? We're looking at 10.5 there, 8.76 on the 42s. Maybe this is inconsistent because my pattern is not equilateral. It's 5x6. Maybe it should be 5x7.5, and then it would be consistent. That's something we can look at a little bit later. This inconsistent one here, what do we got over there? We've got 6.9, 6 milliseconds per meter, and we've got 8 milliseconds per meter. Not much difference in the time, but the contours actually tell a different story. Yeah, I think the zigzags are easier to get consistent when you're talking about a V or a train track zigzag, which we'll show in a second. So a train track zigzag inconsistent is down here. And looking at this, it looks pretty simple. It's very simple, so you can't mess this up. But these peaks here and these troughs here, so the troughs should be a shorter value and the peaks should be a longer value of their time, and that's how you'll get it consistent. And bring on the contours again. Let's whack those on. You can see here we get this wibble wobble through, which is the same as what we saw above, but this is just train trace, because this timing is exactly the same as this timing here. This timing is 321. This time 321. There's no difference in the delay times. This construct is skinning the cat a different way, doing it a different way, but with the same result. And there may be valid reasons why you do this. Like I said before, run out of 42, so you can't do a 42 zigzag. You want to do 17. You have boxes full of 17s that are going out of date or something like that, so you want to use those up. Then you could use this method as opposed to this method. Pretty easy. These are just understanding that the numbers are what matters. The numbers in this case are what matters. The nominal times are what matters. The downhole times are what matters. So what you see on the surface is just a contextual viewpoint for you. You know, it's context for you to try to understand the reasoning behind how your connections are interrelated. Yeah, but the numbers are what matter. And this is the big failing with electronics. People seem to forget about the numbers. They don't look at the numbers. They don't read the numbers because people's brains don't really work in numbers. So it's good to kind of try to understand when electronics, try to think of it in terms of non-electric or shock tube, and think about your electronics in terms of that, so that you can draw a picture in your mind about the holes and their relationship to each other. And then when you understand the relationship of each hole, you will understand what the contacts or the contours are telling you, and you won't even need the delay paths. Anyway, where were we at? I got off on a bit of a rant. Here we go with this inconsistent, right? And then we want to swap it to consistent. So what do? We put in this long offset on the peak of that zigzag, and we put in a short, or we keep this the same. We could even shorten it up, but it would probably distort it. We could put a 9 in here, but it would definitely distort it. So this is a good method. Just put in a longer delay on the top. If you don't have long delays, you could leave this long delay as a 17, as a 25, a 17, and put in a 9 down here if that's what you've got in your magazines. Quite easy. It's flexible. You just need to keep the trough less than the peak. Pretty easy. Yeah, so this is the inconsistent version with this wibbly wobbly line through there. It's not significant, but it is there. And this is this nicely consistent work through here. Let's see what I'm interested to know if the burden relief on that's a bit better, more consistent. Yeah, definitely more consistent. A little bit crappy in here, but you can see here that offset flip-flop that we had on the other one is less pronounced, and so we're all sitting in a very similar 7.3 milliseconds per meter there. Only in this section where we apply those different delays is the timing a little bit different. And then if we go to the inconsistent, we can see that we're back to the similar inconsistent pattern that we had before, 6 and 8.7, but with this one we get a much more consistent timing, burden relief and contour. So I'm interested to know, maybe as you're stepping up, the delays are just too big on this one, which is annoying. Maybe if these were different, maybe it should have been 25 going forward, and still a long time between. So ideally, maybe this needs to be somewhere other than 67. Maybe it needs to be a 59 or something like that to make that the super a very consistent zigzag. But no one, I mean, if we're talking about shock tubes, no one makes those delays. Moving on, we've got a zigzag center V shot. Here we go. Let's put it on the timing, and it is the inconsistent one, or it's the consistent one through here, but we're always going to have inconsistencies in this V section here as we swap the orientation of the V. So you can see here the V follows and then tries to pull back to the other way. So it's sort of like trying to do this. So it snakes through the shot. And you see that, and then we mitigate that snaking through the shot with these long delays on the peaks and these shorter delays on the troughs of our zigzag. What do we got down here? We've got as close to what we can with a zigzag, which is just straight up consistent. So it's not even a zigzag, it's just a zig. No zigzag there. So this is just a standard square V on this one, even though I've got it under that listing, but it's essentially a standard square V. Moving on. Well, this is an inconsistent one that we tried to do, and you can see how I'm saying here again, this one here 100% not recommended. This is disgusting. It's throwing it everywhere. You know, the chance of cut off and you know, holes firing out of sequence is just going to be extenuated through here, and I mean, they're all advancing okay. You know, they're not terribly out of place, but now you've got holes lining up even with an offset. I mean, this is disgusting. So do not do this. I stick to the other one and adjust your delays. If you want a flatter V, use this consistent method and swap your delays out. Go longer across here, or go shorter through the length. So if you want a flatter V, you're going to have to increase your time. And this is the problem that everyone doesn't really think about, is they don't really think about time as a limiting factor. And I just keep bringing that up because there's just not enough people that think that way. They believe that now with electronics it's even worse. You can do anything you like with your timing. Well, that's not always the case. You can't break the rules of classical mechanics. And that is a key. Like, physics is going to bring you back into alignment whether you want it or not. So you can do anything you like with the timing, but whether you should do anything you like with the timing, well, that's a different story. It's much like anything. So let's go up here and put it back to the 42 that we had going through there. You can, which I didn't show you, you can do kind of like a half tree stagger on these. Let's just quickly show that, because that might be a bit more of a reasonable way to think about it. So you could go off here with a 42. Yeah, and we could get these in here, and we could let's see, untie selected holes. Well, that didn't work, did it? Seem to be having a little bit of a issue. Alright, let's just quickly box select that. We'll untie those selected holes. Wow, okay. Having a little bit of a drama with that. So we'll come back to that. But imagine taking this 42 out of here, and that would be another option to elongate it. But that's essentially a 67, right? So why won't you run a 67 up the middle? You don't have a 67, you can use a 42 on the V1. Pretty pretty reasonable sort of scenario. Let's just undo that. So again, numbers. That with the 42 on the side is, how many undos do I get? Here you go. All right, so 42s on that V1 is the same as a 67 run straight up the guts there. Anyway, this is going okay, and I'm feeling pretty confident we'll get through all of these now. So let's move on to the train tracks inconsistent. So this is really terrible, and it's just it's disgusting with an offset on all the V's. Let's see what we get with that. Yeah, what a mishmash of yuckiness. You've got all sorts of action going on in there. Maybe it's perfect for what you need, and this is how you fire at your sight. I wouldn't suggest you fire at your sight like that. I wouldn't even suggest you fire at your sight like with this one either, on a staggered zigzag. And you don't see a lot of people use zigzags, but wow, they are super easy. If you have a very long shot, they're super easy for everyone to tie up, because they just go down these runs with the down the spacings with the delays, and everyone just walks down a row all to the center line. The shot firer can walk down the center line looking back. So train track shots are great for that reason. And the shot firer doesn't do any work, just walks a short path, but everybody else walks a long path. And you don't have this switchback stuff, but an echelon is considered a better method for avoiding misfires, and it's considered a better method for cutoffs. So if the blast fires in front, and it cuts off on a shorter delay number. Now, maybe there's some reasoning behind that. They say shorter delays have more failures. I'm not sure. Maybe shorter delays have less lifespan. People hold them for a lot longer. They're constantly clicking them in and then unclicking them because they're changing their control line. Maybe there's reasons around that might be safety related, experiential related. And so in that point, I think maybe, yeah, you're right. Use a echelon or a Echelon V when you cut this off on this side, and you haven't clipped this in for some reason. You only lose this little section. Everything else fires forward. Nothing fires around behind itself. But if you are on a train tracks kind of style, let's go to the train tracks, and one of these leads fails, one of these shorter delay leads fails here, well, everything still fires behind it. Now these leads are covered, they haven't fired, and now they're covered with rock and dirt, and so you now need to pluck your way through this debris and fix up and remediate the blast. So I suppose there, in that point, that can be considered pretty good. Also with a V echelon or an echelon, when you're a shot firer, you could be walking from this point, or you could come through here, clipping in these control lines as your job. That could be your job, and the crew's job could be running the echelons. So they just leapfrog around the echelons, and you just come along here, and you're always looking up the echelon, looking at a blast crew member, and making sure that they're clipping it in and paying attention, not horsing around on the shot, and not having conversations, and not staying focused on timing and tying in. So there's some safety factor around that, but you can just walk along this path and finish off the blast to the initiation point. Right, we're at here, and we're on the train tracks inconsistent, which we showed, which was relatively disgusting. And then we move on to the send lift. And here we have a send lift. Now, you moving the initiation point along would create the fishbone, which we can draw on this spare pattern over here. But you can see here we've got a 42 offset on one side of the control line. We've got a offset on our aisle to the two lines here, to two lines. We haven't alternated we haven't flipped this, so this is 2 and 2 here and 1 and 1, like you would maybe with a sump, to do a diamond square fire. However, because you're not really sumps, you're probably not really interested in single hole on sumps. You just want to move the dirt as quickly and as fast into the center. They're a lot smaller, so you get a lot less charges, and generally you just want to really heave it up, and you want a lot of energy in that. They're generally overpowered, and that reason is because the digger has to hook down to its max breakout. So if you are in a gold mine and your bench or your flitch height is 3 meters and you do a sump, you probably want a 6 meter, 6 or 12 meter sump to drain the water in. So you're going to try and dig down 6 meters. Well, you want that dirt moved. You want a lot of breakup, a lot of air. Well, not air, because it's a sump, it might be wet. So a lot of voids in that blast that isn't rock, so that you can get the teeth of the bucket into the spaces and really hook that out, and you're not stressing out the excavator by reaching down and having it fully loaded up on its hydraulics. So that's why you highly energize sumps. So we can do a sump tie up if you want, but that's a center lift. Maybe you'd use that in a ramp or a drop cut for your first blast. You'd want to do a drop cut like that, and maybe this is the ramp part, and this is your first full depth hole, so you're maximizing your energy and you're not firing up a ramp, and your ramp is firing down. Maybe the layers of the rock, the horizontal layers, maybe it's stratified and you need to use that energy before it spreads and opens too many of those joints, and allows energy to migrate through the joints before they have blasted and fired. So maybe you want to fire the top first. Maybe it's a daylighting ramp. So maybe you've got this section as a contour section where the holes are getting progressively shorter to the daylight, and so maybe you just want to fire from the daylight out. So all these things are considerations you have to think about. The geometry, the three-dimensional shape of that blast. In this program has a three-dimensional aspect to it, so you could see this. I could alter these depths to show you what I mean by having this decay down to daylight, or we could have it with the depth of the blast hole getting incrementally deeper, and that's why we picked that point as our first full depth central hole. Maybe there's lots of reasons to think about that. Let's go to the square here. We've got the square one where we've done a 42 offset, a 25 offset, and this one doesn't really matter which side you put it on, because there is no overlap, right? So this is pretty standard center lift, square center lift, maybe. So if we go over here, let's do a fishbone, a proper fishbone, like people would consider a fishbone to be. I don't know. What would you think we would use? Let's use, let's do a really tight V. Let's say we have a lot of, we have some 9s. No one really carries 9s. But I love 9s. They are the ultimate infill hole delay. I always kept a box of 9s personally. But anyway, let's bring this line selection on. That's a bit better than the other one. Yeah, and we'll tie these in with 9s up the center, and then we're going to do a very tight V. But we're going to use 42s and 67s maybe. So we're going to offset with a, yeah, I'm a bit concerned because the gap between these and the gap between the control is significant, right? So these are a 25 millisecond gap. The control has only got a 9 millisecond gap. So there might be some issues around that. Let's find out. So we can do a train tracks, which is really easy to do for the tie-up, but we're going to do a herringbone, like I said. So we're going to head off with a 42 on this side, 9s and 42. So this is going to be a really tight herringbone center lift, so a very tight V. It's going to have a, so with the speed that we're traveling and then the slowness, so we're traveling, the speed up the center on this control line is massive, and the delay out to the burden in comparison to the control line is significant. So there's a big pause between there, so we're really firing this up like a line fire, and then coming back down out here. So then we will drop this in with 67s. Now I know it's 5 rows, so you don't really see the full issues around it. You're not really seeing what happens on this side. You've only got 1 row of 67s is what I'm saying, but you know, this is what we're doing. Tie this in here, and we'll just tie that in there. So, well, I am really impressed with this program at this stage. I hadn't used it a lot before, and I was gifted it by some friends, and I thankfully thank them a lot. So this is called Paradigm by Igneous. In Australia, it's Igneous, and I think there's a different distributor in the rest of the world. So in Australia, this program is reasonably priced, pretty good. I'm not sure what the pricing structure of other countries is for Paradigm. However, it's got a lot of good features, and you know, it's I'm seriously impressed by it. Anyway, so we fired this way. Let's turn on the timing contours, and we see how tight this is. Very tight V, very tight V. And if we turn on the burden relief, we can see we're at, well, it's 11. It's a fairly reasonable burden relief, milliseconds per meter. What's this one? 7.8. These are reasonable numbers. There's nothing wrong with that. And we see this contour line, and let's try a initiation. There you go, and that's 10th speed. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. So this is the concern that we saw there. We see that we've got some advancement on this side of 2 holes to 1. So if it was 1 hole, I'd feel better about it, but that's because there's 9. But you know, that's how it becomes really tight. I mean, there's the V through there. I mean, that's the contour lines are there. You can see how they line up here. This time lines up with the firing mechanism. Yeah, so pretty tight. Well, there's surface and downhole. That's what you're seeing there. So that's pretty cool. You got a surface fire and then a downhole fire. Let's go back to the start. Let's see what these 3 are doing separately. See what they're doing. You can see the difference there between them. It's a bit hard to keep your eyes on 3 things going at once. However, I think, you know, this is a excellent overview and look into something like Paradigm. And for non-L, I've been only playing with the non-L section here because the videos are focused on non-L, but later on I might focus on electronic stuff. What I would mention though, and like to show you, is, you know, I had written something, a program, and this, and I'm sure you can probably do something with Paradigm similar to show the area of influences of the holes. Here, I think this is my little application I wrote. It's a bit clicky and finicky, so it does have a few. This is an older version because I thought I'd go with it as it's a bit safer than the other one. But you can see here we'll just safer than my newer version. I mean, not safer than Paradigm. Paradigm's much more advanced than this silly little program that I tried to write. There you can see it's already broken. Rightio, awesome. But what I wanted to show here is if you turn on these TORLs, you can see these holes. Now, if I was to select all the blast holes, where are we? Select, click, selecting all. I hold down the H key. Do I have only holes? Let's see. I've got ties there. Let's see. Selecting holes. Yeah, there you go. See how clicky it is? And I'll grab those, and then let's say I go back and I want to change all these holes, their dip, to change the whole dip, and I'm going to change that to 90. Let's see if this works. Hopefully it does it for all and not. No, it's just going to do one. There you go. That's the problem that I had. Anyway, interesting, but you can, let's say we change a few here, just change these hole dips, and I think I brought in the multiple hole dips in at a newer version. There, so we've got this. Actually, you know what? Let's select all, and we'll just delete it. We'll get rid of them, and we'll put in another pattern here, and we'll change this hole dip, hole angle to 90 degrees, and yep, we'll yep, sure. Just showing off what I had played around with. Let's make this a square so that we don't get confused. That's a hollow square, so let's do a field circle, field square, and whatever. So we're going to hit a, let's say 5 by 6 was what we had in the other pattern there. What is it if we do, let's see, a spacing equilateral? There you go, 5.8. So you can see that maybe that's why the relief is different on the other one. But out of interest, let's do 6 so that we're comparing apples with apples. Got this. It doesn't really matter how many rows per hole. I think we had 5, 10. That's reasonable. Let's go staggered. Sure. Let's hit that and we'll show. So here we have this this TORL, and let's dial up the TORL so see the overlap, and you can see here that the overlap of this blast hole is only gives this minimal area. So this is what equilateral patterns do, or staggered patterns do. If this was an equilateral pattern, this gap would be even smaller. So that's a interesting thing there. Let's select all, delete that, and then we'll hit in here a square pattern. There you go. Takes a little bit. Square pattern, and it 5 by 6, and make sure this is 90, and let's set these as the default settings. So next time it comes up, and there you go. So you can see this is this overlap. We haven't changed the area of influence for the hole. We're doing a lot more crushing in these connected areas. Now, the reason why you're not seeing equal overlap over here is because we're at not, we're at different. So if it was 5 by 5, you would see an equal overlap there, or a 6 by 6. But you would see equal underlap. But you can see this gap even with overlap. You have a much larger zone, and this is why people use square for like maybe creating more fines, because this has more interaction between your interburdens and less interaction between your spacings. Whereas the equilateral pattern, that's kind of merged. So this is a bit more of design stuff than timing stuff, and we were working on timing going through. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that. So this is useful for that reason and purpose, but I am thoroughly impressed with this functionality, the timing scenario manager on this Igneous Tech paradigm. And just out of interest, let's quickly let's see if it's probably the wrong thing. Oops. Wow. Hopefully I've recorded. Anyway, we'll go back down here and get that. Oh, interesting. Radio. So this session over here, but Igneous Tech. That's the place to go. Radio. I think that's about it. I'm pretty happy with this, and I hope you enjoyed the stream. Oh, I had a comment, and I didn't even realize. So I apologize if I have had a comment. That's not bad. I had a viewer. So welcome. Can't read your name. Sorry. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed the stream. That's all new to me. If you like my videos, on timing and on blasting, and you wanna, gee, it's very hot in this house. You wanna support me, then on my YouTube channel website, on the website is let's see where we're at. On the website, there is a link to my buy me a coffee stuff, so you can buy me a coffee if you would like to. It's quite this is where I post my articles. Buy me a coffee, and that's supporting me financially, especially in these times where some people are allowed to work and other people are not allowed to work. So I appreciate any support that you can support, and also please subscribe to me. That would be awesome if you could subscribe to my YouTube. Let me just find that, and it's called Redundantly Useful, and this is where I do videos, and yeah, so awesome. So I think it's great. See, there I am. I'm live. You can see that, and you can support me there. And if you would like to buy something for your support, now this means Streamlab takes a cut, but I've got the Blasting Apps logo there that I wrote some blasting applications, which you can also get to if you're interested in seeing those blasting applications. And they are, and you can buy these hats and stuff. So obviously tune out if you're not interested in doing that, but support is really good. Sorry, I'll just type that in better. Yeah, so and we have the blasting apps, so you can find links to these anyway on there, but you can use a multi-blast calculator. You got a vibration calculator there. It looks a bit disgusting, so let's just pull that down in that format. It's sort of like formatted for a phone, but there's a little how-to guide on the YouTube channel as well. It's a lot's changed in this, so you've got lots of different calculators there, and I add calculators to this occasionally. Anyway, let's sign off, I think, because I'm pretty much done. And so I hope that you enjoy these videos. Please support me to make more videos, and subscribe, like, to fix the algorithm up on YouTube, and to get me noticed around. And hopefully there is a topic that you would like me to talk about, or there is a topic that you would like to discuss live or not live, or Even message me through LinkedIn if you think I can help. I'm more than willing to help and more than willing to share information. And all I ask in return is for people to subscribe and like and share my videos and to support me to make more. Thank you very much, and hopefully this was a useful video. I waffled a bit too long, about 10 minutes of waffle at the end, but I'm sure I can cut that out. But I will see you later. This will be the only one this week. I'm going away for a little bit of a holiday while I still can. Rumour is that that I won't be able to go for a holiday again. So I'm going to take a few days and go down to the southwest of WA. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy yourselves as I will be enjoying myself.